This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard, whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast. We have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
You're listening to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by The Flow magazine. Since its inception, the focus of The Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with the continuation of our Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make The Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to The Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's theflowmagazine.com. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of December 2016, Mountain Glass is offering their Boro sale. Troutman First Quality Rod at 30% off. Just put in the coupon code TAG at checkout. That's TAG. And don't forget that freight or sample packs do not apply to this sale. And for all you soft glass nerds, their Jewelry Making Essentials Kit are 25% off. Just put in the code JEWELRY at checkout. That's JEWELRY. And don't forget they'll be closed from December 24th through January 2nd of 2017 so they can spend time with their families and friends during the holiday season. For any comments, questions, or concerns, just go to mountainglass.com. That's mountainglass.com. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 138. This is Jay Michael, your host, and thank you so much for tuning in today. With 17 years behind the torch, I am as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories in hopes to inspire and entertain while helping you grow your business. And today is no exception. Today's guest is featuring Scott Fleishman, creator, owner, innovator, engineer of Oxygen Frog, which is a home oxygen concentrate systems that you can run your torches off of and not have to worry about ever getting gas again. We get into all the discussions and talks about his systems, other home fill systems, as well as just his glass career in general. He started off early on in his career and life as an engineer, then transitioned into glass blowing, which then transitioned into the oxygen home systems. We get into all kind of talks about how long he's been in business, what was his inspiration for starting this company, what your return on investment can look like when you do invest into these systems, basic setups for your home, portability of them, how long it takes to get your tanks filled up. I mean, every little detail I could think of if I was myself to purchase this from him. Why is it that I would purchase this system for my house? And why would it be more convenient than just going down the street or having a delivery dropped off of some oxygen? It's a really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it and appreciate Scott coming on and sharing this information. He was on Torch Talk last year as well. He talks about the episode number. I will research it and make sure that's in the show notes also. He has a little video that he did with the guys over at Torch Talk, so definitely was cool that he did that for you also out there. And definitely enjoy this talk. It's a lot of fun. We just had Black Friday and Cyber Mondays just came through. Myself personally, I did do a small little Cyber Monday sale. It wasn't as big this year as I was pushing it last year. And again, it's only due to my schedule. And this last week, right when I did my interview I did JD's interview and then also this one on the same day. And by the end of the day, my voice was shot and I ended up starting to come down with the flu. And I had the flu bug all last week, which is part of why this episode is coming out now instead of last week. I really didn't have a voice or the energy to really do any kind of recording at all. I wanted to make sure I didn't sound like I was dying from emphysema or some kind of crazy shit, so I definitely want to wait a little bit to put this out there. And thank you, too, if you're new to the show, for checking us out. We had a huge increase in numbers and downloads after the episode with JD Mapleson, and was honestly completely blown away and caught off guard. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect. I know he's got a really solid following of collectors and just fans of his work. And I think it really goes to show that as you're an artist and you begin to build relationships with your customer base, not only the smoke shops, but also those that are truly buying your glass from you, whether they're collectors or they're buying them from stores. It's so important that we keep this relationship going, even if it's with somebody that bought your glass 5 years ago. I still get excited when I see posts on Instagram of someone using my work from something they purchased from me 5-6 years ago. It's really awesome. And I do truly feel that with the way that JD carries himself and promotes himself through marketing and through the social feeds, that he really found a true way to build his true following. Whether he has 36,000 followers, which he does on his Instagram, or not, the core idea to have your 1,000 true fans. There was a book that's out there, actually. I think it's actually called 1,000 True Fans. It's all about that, about building your tribes and stuff. But his tribe's pretty solid, and it showed with the download numbers. So kind of a sidetrack there. But if you are new to this and you came on and found the show due to JD's interview and his posts, again, I appreciate you coming on and listening to other past episodes and this one as well. And I hope definitely am fulfilling your need for more things in glass and entertainment value-wise, but also on the educational side, and give you some true value, as my goal is to help you as the artist, as the small entrepreneur, to help to increase your profits, build your business, market yourself, find ways to sell your glass better and easier, and also to be more efficient on the torch as well. There's so many facets and aspects of what we do besides just turning a torch on. It's very crucial to understand all those areas and to understand all the hats that we have to wear, and to try to find that balance, which isn't always possible, but it's there and it's obtainable if you really try hard and set systems up. And as I go through the show and do these interviews and do my own little side shows and stuff for you, I'm still myself, after almost 18 years of doing this, fine-tuning my own personal stuff and my systems. And as I do that, I like to pass them on to you and let you know what I'm doing, to maybe you'll try it yourself and you'll find a better way of doing it, which I've had happen, and you've reached out to me, and it's awesome. So that being said, if you do have any information or want to talk to me or hit me up or want to be a guest on the show even, I would be honored to have you on. Hit me up, info@wiseguyradio.com, info@wyzguyradio.com. The website is also coming along. As those that listen to a past episode know that the website went down. It is now getting rebuilt, and the basic template that I've created for it is really where I wanted it to be from the beginning. And now I'm just getting things plugged in, episodes and updates and what have you. There's an annoying little double pop-up that comes up. I got to figure out how to get rid of that. Just kind of a little thing to get you to give me your email address and join the community and what have you. But other than that, it's been a lot of fun lessons learned. We're also getting geared up for the launch of the new online course series, Wise Guy University, coming up, which I'm super, super excited about. My goal with this is to help to fine-tune a foundational knowledge base for glass artists, so that when you get into these courses, especially one of the ones that we're doing, the longer ones, which is actually a 3-month course, you can walk away after 90 days and really know what the hell it is you're doing. Not become a master or even an advanced glass artist, but to really have a solid foundation. So when you walk away, you can then see something that has been made out of glass and have an understanding of how it was created. And if not a full understanding, at least semi-understanding, so that if you wanted to create it, you can go through the process to figure it out on your own. So definitely I'm getting excited about this, and I'm going to be doing a full episode. I'm thinking probably episode 140, which will be in 2 weeks from now. I'm going to do just a full episode on talking about it, and because I really want to get your feedback. I have a survey going out next week, asking questions to see what your needs are as an artist, as a business owner, whether you're struggling in certain areas, whether you're excelling in certain areas. I definitely am very curious. So I'm going to be doing a little survey, and going to be giving away a $50 gift card to Mountain Glass to one random person that does fill the survey out. For everybody that fills it out, completes the survey, I'll be putting all your names in a hat. My wife will then draw a name out and randomly, and we'll have another winner for that too. And next episode that I have coming out, 139, stay tuned for that one, because I do have the winner chosen for the last trivia question that we did. So thank you for everybody who did respond with their correct answers. Had some wrong answers too, but the correct ones, we took all your names and threw them in a hat. We drew a winner, and the next episode, 139, you will find out who that is. And congratulations ahead of time to whoever you are, as I know who you are, but I ain't telling you till the next one. So, yes, I'm rambling here, so I'm going to rock and roll. Time to get on with my day, and I hope you are enjoying your day. And if you had a successful or non-successful Cyber Monday or Black Friday or holiday sales, I'm curious what you're doing, how you're going about it, how you're marketing yourself. So definitely contact me. I'm definitely curious. And I'm going to be doing a full review of my holiday sales myself, as I want to be as transparent as I possibly can with you, so you can see that even though I've been doing this for 18 years and have success in many areas of my life, there's still struggles. There's still failures. There's still roadblocks and stumbling blocks and whatever other name cliche term you want to use. But, it is what it is. So on that note, I'm a bounce. Thanks for tuning in to episode 138 featuring Scott Fleishman of Oxygen Frog. And don't, again, forget, if you have not yet, go to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review if you feel we need it, and also a written review. Lets iTunes know that this show is being listened to, which helps us get more exposure out there in the world of iTunes and the 250 million plus, or 250,000, that's what it is. I hope it's not 250 million. The 250,000 podcasts that are out there in this sea of podcasts. This one's out there. As they always say, the cream rises to the top, and we are slowly rising to the top. So thank you for the downloads, for the reviews, and we will see you next time on episode 139 of the Wise Guy Radio Show. Until then, take care of yourself. Be good, and we'll see you next time. Love you. Peace. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man, me too. Likewise. Been playing phone tag, and it's a good thing to get you on here. In this world of oxygen, as we all know, we're going to get into your conversation with the Oxygen Frog company that you have. And I don't know, we have a lot of areas to cover here, but before we get too sidetracked, let's definitely get into your origin story and how you were introduced into the flame and got your glass career going.
Okay. Yeah, it was... these stories can be long, but they're fun, so let's just dig in.
Yeah, let's do it.
This one starts, and I don't mean to date myself too much, but this one starts in the late 80s. And this is the first time I had actually really been exposed to glass blowing. And it actually came from my organic chemistry professor. I had asked him about some certain reaction. It's actually how they make silver mirrors. It's some kind of test for some kind of chemical or something, but it's been years. But he said, hey, come by my office. We'll run this reaction, which we did, and it was really, really cool to watch. The beakers just turn into a mirror if that certain chemical is present. Anyway, but he said, Scott, you should consider maybe doing undergraduate research with me. And this was Dr. Jared Butcher at Ohio University. I think he's still there. I should call him. But I said, yeah, that sounds great. Well, what he was working on is he called it his robot, and it was just a box with some electrical outlets on it and a couple of valves, and there was a computer inside that would turn all these outlets on and off, et cetera, et cetera. And he called it his robot, and it was actually programmed with a line editor. And those of you who don't know what a line editor is, you don't want to know what a line editor is. It programmed in BASIC, so I was helping him with some of the programming on that, and then what he wanted to do was be able to just put all his reagents in these jars and hook everything up to the robot and plug, stirrers and heating mantles into the electrical outlets, and then come back the next morning and have his crystallized, purified product ready for him, etc. So he wanted me to help with some of the mechanical stuff, like filtration, for instance. And which is really tricky when you don't know what you're going to be filtering yet, because you don't know what the product's going to look like. Filtering becomes a real problem. So anyways, I said to him, and this was the moment, I said to him, You know what would really work cool is if we had a piece of glassware that looked just like this. And he goes, oh, well, come here, let me show you something. And he had a glass bench over on the other side of the lab.
Hmm.
And I think he just had, it was a national hand torch. I think was literally just laying on the bench with the tip pointing up. And he said, watch this. And I was just enthralled. And I remember saying to myself at that moment, because engineering school is very, very stressful and it's very difficult, suicide actually seems like a good option at, at certain points of that.
Jesus.
And I remember saying to myself, Scott, stay focused on the engineering. Don't just go become a glass worker, because I very easily could have just went and did that. And it really stuck with me. And I played a little bit when I could in my spare time on that bench. But it really wasn't until about, oh my goodness, 12, 15 years later, this had been the early 2000s. I had been an engineer for a while, and I had gotten into real estate, and I had bought these couple of duplexes, and I sold them like a year later and just made tons of money, buckets of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to spend a few $1,000s. I'm going to get a torch, because I've been thinking about it for 14 years. Yeah, exactly. You're sitting in church, not paying attention. I'm blowing glass in my head.
Yeah.
That's literally, we all do that. We're all guilty of that. So I got a torch, and there was no one to teach me. So it was just kind of experimental. And I think I was working on one 125 cubic foot tank. That's not even a K tank. It's like half a K tank. And I live 45 minutes from air gas. So I was working on Red Max, which I still use to this day. I still love it. And it was funny back in the 2000s too, in the early 2000s, because here in Tallahassee there were no glass shops, none. And so far as I know, I was the only glass blower in town. And if you wanted a piece of glass, all right, listen, don't tell my mother, okay?
Right.
If you wanted a piece of glass, there was a woman at the flea market, but you had to know her, and you had to be recommended. And if you were okay, if she thought you were okay, she'd take you out around the back and there's a little path between the trailers, and she'd lift the tarp, and she had maybe 50 pieces of glass that she would sell out of the back of this trailer.
Huh.
And she started buying every lumpy piece of glass I could make. And it was really cool. And that went on for several years. And then she kind of, I don't know what happened. She went on to other things. So and that kind of dried up. So my torch kind of sat for a while. And then it was really funny. This would have been, I'm thinking now, it's like 07, 08. I remember this one day I says, I haven't filled my tank and I haven't played with the glass. And it had been like a year or two. I says, I'm going to go fill my tank. So I go over to Air Gas. And the guys there knew me. And they're like, dude, for the longest time, you were the only glass blower in town. You were the only one. And now there's like 10 of y'all. I'm like, what are you talking about? That can't possibly. They're like, yeah. They're like, no, actually, they're doing a big show tomorrow. You want to talk about divine intervention or divine interference. Let's call it that. They said tomorrow they're having a big glass blowing demonstration over tobacco leaf. And I'm like, really? And it was just, I said, we just sent a doer of oxygen over there. There's going to be going to be tons of people. So I'm like, okay. Now remember, there's still at this point, there's still a pretty big stigma attached with a smoke shop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I used to preach in the jail and all these other things. I don't want somebody from church seeing me and, that stuff. It's like it would be almost as embarrassing as being seen going into a sex shop. It's like, ugh, you don't want to be seen going into a sex shop. Anyway, so it was a funny day because one of my rental houses was having some kind of trouble, and I was literally crawling through the crawl space this day that they were having the party. And I said, but it was only about a couple miles from the tobacco leaf party. So in between crawling under this rental house, I sneak over to the party, and I don't know anybody, of course. And a lot of these guys are a lot younger than me. and it was out in the parking lot. And I had brought my didymium glasses, and I'm just leaning against a tree watching these young kids blow glass, but I'm the only one in the crowd that's wearing didymiums. And this guy, one of the guys was blowing glass. His name's Evan Schechter, um, really good friend of mine turned out. Um, he kept he told me, he says, I was asking everybody, who's the guy in the didymiums? Who's that guy in the didymiums over there? And then, so he came over, started talking to me. They invited me up, put me on a torch. I started blowing glass, and I was so out of practice. It had been a year. But I did manage to make one or two things that were nearly acceptable. And he introduced me to Gabe, who owns the shop. And first of all, and they were like, "Oh yeah, man. I mean, we sell pieces of glass in here, for over $100." I'm like, "No, you do not." And they're like, "No, come in." And they were showing me the stuff. What's a rig? I mean, I'm like, no, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, I happen to have just a couple of pieces I had made in my car, and Gabe bought them, and he's like, Scott, we'll take everything you can make. And I'm like, okay. And it was really cool. And those guys turned out to be some of my best friends, and the community here was so wonderful. They just kind of, and I wasn't even involved in this at all. And they just kind of drew me in, and everything was great.
That's
and
awesome.
then it really was. I mean, I can't thank those guys enough. And my approach to this was, and there's a lot of different business models. I mean, we're all capitalists, like it or not, we are. And my goal was to come up with something unique, and I like being creative, and I like doing the artsy stuff, and I do that on occasion. But my goal was to come up with a design that was unique enough that it really stood out, and something nobody had ever seen, but it was something that I could repeat over and over and over, and they would sell like crazy. So I came up with, and there's a couple iterations of this. First I made a Venturi shotgun, which was really cool,
Hmm.
but it didn't really sell that well. But then I came up with, and I started selling my glass under the name of Stillwater, and which is my favorite imaginary band. It's a reference to a movie.
Nice.
Anyway, so my wife actually suggested that.
Cool. It's a great
So
name.
yeah, so I started making these Venturi, and these Venturi rigs, and nobody ever seen a rig like this before. Nobody's seen a perk like this before, even to this day. And it was really funny because I'm still not entirely comfortable with the culture. I'm still kind of hope nobody sees me,
Hmm.
but they talked me into to going to AGE in Vegas, and I'm like, okay. And I ended up sharing a booth with another glass blower here in town, and we got there, and we were in the very corner of the proto room, just way back. I mean, I was literally the guy and I only had like 2 feet on the edge of the table, way back in the very furthest corner. And I would show everybody my rigs, and I had some water in them. They'd be like, "Look at this perk! You've never seen anything like this before," and it would blow everybody's mind. And I ended up taking that day in those 2 days of AGE. I ended up taking $35,000 in orders,
Hell yeah.
and I was like, "Holy cow, we got something here!" So no, it was really an exciting moment. I had no idea that I'd get that kind of response.
So about
And
what time period was that? What year wise you think?
this would be 2012, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. That sounds about right because that's about the time period when that show was really blowing up and they were spending that kind of money there.
Yeah, yeah, and it was great because people they'd order, and I think I was getting $125 a piece, I think, and they'd be ordering 10, 12, 15 at a time, and it's like awesome. And then I tried to get some other people to help me, and actually Evan started helping me for a while. Evan's Evan's really talented, and I tried to teach some other people to make them for me so I could get my volume up. But you don't it's a funny way to look at this, but you don't really realize how good you are at something until you try to teach somebody else.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because when you get up into that range of over $100 wholesale range, they've got to be flawless. With things you can get away on a $10 piece or $30 piece, you can't get away with that when you're over $100.
Yep.
So anyways, I was doing that for a while. I'm still 45 minutes from air gas, so I ended up buying a single concentrator off of Craigslist. For $100, I think I got it for the old Craigslist special 5-liter. And then I think I ended up buying one, and that worked really good. But 5 liters is not enough to run a Red Max.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought, and this is the way I recommend people start. I'm going to kind of go out and be a little general here. When you're thinking about getting into oxygen concentration systems, you don't have to just go and shell out $6,000 all at once. I ran for years making those Venturis. I ran for years with just 2 concentrators. I think I had like a 5 and an 8, and that was enough to really rage the top torch on my Red Max. And then I just ran the surface mix head, the big head. I ran that on a bottle.
Oh.
And instead of changing a bottle every day, I ended up changing a bottle like once a month.
Yeah, that's smart. I forget you can take that torch and turn it into two hoses coming off like that. Yeah.
Yes, I won't show you a picture of it. It's kind of an embarrassing job of butchering that torch, but it works. I should send it back to Nortel and have them do it right. But right now it's working, so I haven't burnt the house down. But I ran that way for years. But then the whole time, and remember, it was in the. I had been looking at the concentrators and stuff all through the 2000s, but you couldn't get them without a prescription. I mean, they were almost impossible to find. You had to have a prescription to get an oxygen machine.
Huh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so it was really, I think, in the latter half of the 2000s that you really started. If you go back and you look at the news groups, that you really start seeing the hobbyists really starting to play with them, and that's when they really came into their own. A friend of mine, Trey Cornett, he's one of the guys that really, he put out some FAQs and some things like that on how to build them, and they were fully developed systems in the hobbyist realm, by 2008.
Right.
With the compressors and the pressure switches and all that stuff. And it was kind of a funny time. Everybody was worried they were going to blow their face off. You can't run that oxygen through a compressor. Well, it turns out that, it's not as dangerous as we all thought. So now these systems all been around since the 1960s.
Yeah, exactly.
Industrial, but it's just when the concentrators really started showing up on the secondary market. People start finding them at estate sales. That's when the hobbyists got their hands on them because the price came down enough that they became feasible. I mean, yeah, anybody with $50,000 can get a system. Those have been available for decades.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's kind of my story. And then it was, just I played around and built my own system and worked some of the bugs out. And it was finally just about a couple of years ago now that I finally decided to make it official and start offering these to other people. Because your reputation is at stake with every sale that you make.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to make sure you got all the bugs worked out. And even as hard as you try, there's still one that comes up occasionally.
Yeah, you got to have kind of a beta test group to help play with your stuff.
That's exactly right, and my customers have been really super about that, and but it's really become. I am so excited about the success we're seeing and just the response from the people. I mean, it's just such a wonderful community to work with. So
yeah, I definitely want to get into detail about the oxygen frog stuff, but to kind of back up a little bit with the engineering side, because
Uh-huh.
For myself personally, one of the things that turns me on, I mean, talking like really turns me on about for my part of the glass is the engineering and the science in it. And I was, as a child and getting older, I've always wanted to get into engineering or architecture of some sort,
Uh-huh.
mostly landscape design, but also I was always intrigued by building and stuff. And
Yeah.
to get into the glass, because I'm asked a lot, like when I'm doing my work over at Disney, like how do I figure out what I'm going to make or what am I making? And I tell them it's like, well, for me, I'm an engineer in a sense, and I got to make a blueprint and then figure out my material lists, and then
Uh-huh.
build a mock up, and then I go from there. And
Right.
it sounds like with you having that background and as a, actually going to school as an engineer and doing what you did, really gave you that heavy foundation of knowledge to keep the wheels in your head in a sense turning to then evolve into this glass scene. And if you want to call it fate or happenstance or whatever, like you're saying, divine interference in a sense, but it's so cool how, like, I like the term John Lee Dumas, who's another podcaster that actually influenced me into getting into the show, but he uses the term your zone of genius, where like
Uh-huh.
you get to a point in your life where you have all these things that you've learned and learn from mistakes and from just learning from whatever, but that you're really really good at, and then you can put them all together and you create this thing, whatever this thing becomes, which is your zone of genius. And it's so awesome to hear your evolution, you trying to figure out and troubleshoot your problems to where now you have not only an incredible line of glass, but you also have a set up system to manufacture and create your own oxygen that is now going to become something that's hopefully going to be a normal staple for this industry. I mean, dude, I've seen your systems just in tobacco leaf, the setup in those things. And I remember when they were first in there, and then you were fine tuning them. And now when I was in there last year, yeah, it was last year for their party. It was actually when you and I first met. And I appreciate the
Yeah.
T-shirt, by the way. I still wear it all the damn time. Um, but it was so fun to see like the upgrade, and I'm sure in 5 years from now you're going to have this whole other upgrade, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly going to evolve it, but because you have this engineering brain that's constantly thinking about how can I make this better, how can I make this better, instead of just gliding through it and just being like, oh, this works fine now, let's just make this work for the rest of my life. You're always bettering yourself. So and kind of the case, my whole point of that, when to back up to the glass, when you were doing the process of the Venturi perk, because like with Boxfan and the American Helix piece, like when that first came out, they have that Venturi effect with their pieces, but
Uh-huh.
it's a dry pipe, and at first they were dry.
Right.
And I saw that too, and when I first saw those pipes, and my engineer brain was like, "Holy shit, these are genius! I get why these work the way they work, and what the sole purpose of why they work and the way they do, to cool off the smoke and etc. And then they started making accessories for water. But for you, what was your time period from like when you first started doing the beginning of your process of figuring these items out? Because before that, you had obviously we're doing production, but to where you really felt like this is the model I'm going to be selling. Was there like a large
Yeah.
gap of time,
Yeah. The goal was, like I said, the goal was to get something that was repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
Something that would be in high demand, but it was something that I could make over and over and over. And I actually developed, like, I think I have like 7 different jigs that I use just to make those particular pieces, with the tripod feed and the holding that particular perk in place while I weld it on the inside, and all these other things that I do. I developed like 7 different jigs just to make that process easier. And but sometimes you're born with a. And I like to think that everybody has something. It's like a talent for music. I'm not a musician. People say we just need to practice more. I tried that. I don't have it. Okay, I don't have that gene. That one skipped me.
Mm.
But the ability to create and design gadgets, that is something that I've always had. I mean, all my toys when I was a kid, they were all broken because I took them all apart to see how they worked.
Right.
And so eventually, in my young teens, all my toys were just a big pile of broken parts and radio pieces and TV pieces and whatever I could scavenge. And then I would make things out of them. And it was just something that I just always got excited about. And something new, inventing something new. And that was the idea behind the Venturi perk. And sometimes it can be a curse too, because that's my favorite part of the business is the creating.
Yeah, me too. The
And
R&D
then
part.
yes, because coming up with the new ideas and recognizing the problems and then solving the problems, which is two different skills.
Hmm.
But then it's a whole nother skill to say, okay, now let's make 1,000 of them. Okay, sometimes that's not as exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, usually it's not. Yeah, unless
So
you're a perfectionist and you're just always striving to make it better and better and better. Because at Disney, like when I first got hired, they told me like this is all production, and I'm like, dude, I've been doing production for 13 years, so I'm excited about doing production because for me, I love to fill my killing up. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll spend all day on a piece, but I prefer to make 20 in a day, and it's how we work. You got to practice R&D, figure it out, and then how can I replicate this? And especially when we get into character work, it has to be almost 99% of the time exactly the same freaking piece every single time. And
right.
For me, that it's a challenge, so it doesn't get old. Because people ask me all the time, like, "Aren't you tired of?" Because I tell them with my Olaf, for instance, I made like over almost 1,000 of them now in the last 2.5 years, and it's like my hands hurt, sure, but my brain still wants to make this even better every time I make them.
You know,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, so I could definitely have an appreciation for that, and I think for anybody that's new into this industry, that's as a glass artist in general, has to understand that you can't just jump around from thing to thing to thing. You got to like figure out one technique, get it down, and then take that technique and then take it and put that into the next thing you learn, and you're constantly evolving and systematically stepping from one thing to the next. But it all is this long journey that all kind of comes together, and then eventually you find your zone of genius, and then you have your item that you make, and that's your thing. It might take 10 years, it might take 5, it might take 3 years. I mean, you've seen it, bro. Like the evolution of some of these artists right now that have been in the industry for 3 or 5 years. It's just
Yeah.
incredible what these kids are cranking out. It's crazy. I'm almost
Oh,
envious of them sometimes. I mean, they have the knowledge base that's someone that's been doing this like you and I for a long time that can help them get past all the stumbling blocks in a sense. But still, you got to take your time and figure out each step along the process.
oh, I know it's almost intimidating. Like I was just at Grassroots about a month ago, and you're walking through there, and some of these kids have been blowing glass for 2, 3 years, and you look at the stuff that they're putting out, and you're like, my God. I mean, these guys are talented,
Hmm.
and they've only been in it this short time, and they're still, they still have all their youth and vigor and their creativeness and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These guys are going to go through the roof.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. I can't wait to see in 10 years from now. I mean, you see what banjo is making right now. Like, imagine what these younger kids that are influenced from banjo are going to be making in 10 years from
Oh,
now.
yes, yes, it's amazing. I'm really happy for them. It's exciting, but on the other hand, it's a little discouraging.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
I can't do that.
There's been plenty of times where I've been on Instagram or some shit. I'm like, man, I'm going to hang up my torch now. I'm tapping out.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Okay, you win.
Jeez. So, yeah, man. So to move forward,
Yeah.
so besides the rigs and stuff, what else are you doing in the glass at all?
Well, I'm mostly making oxygen lately. I um, I've got 2 or 3 more products I want to release um, that are just with the oxygen.
Hmm.
Um, I put out a teaser video. I actually built this gigantic concentrator from scratch. I mean, the beds are like 75 pounds a piece. And there's a little video on my Facebook page. I just put out a little teaser on it. It's not ready for commercial sale yet, but I want to finish that one up. And there's a couple other things. But as far as the glass, I do miss it a lot. I mean, I every once in a while, like maybe once or twice a month, I can get an afternoon where I can sneak away and go melt some glass.
Hmm.
But I can tell I'm getting a little rusty, so that discourages me. But I wish I could take 3, 4 months, and just go learn to do millies, or just go hang out with Kabuki for a while, and learn to do those just incredible implosions that he does. I really love those. I mean, I wish I could had the time to just squirrel myself away and just work on that. That would be To me, that would be something.
Yeah, no, I completely get that, brother. Because my like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but my like we were talking pre-show is like, my Disney gig is like a blessing and a curse because like that's my focus. But like, I wish I could just sit down and just practice one thing for like a week. You know.
And there's something to be said for being diverse. But the guys that are really good focus on that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kabuki, and like Lauren Stump, and like Stankard.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucio. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right.
There's something discouraging. Have you seen that video where he makes that Red Devil with the torch?
Yeah.
And he cranks out that figure in like 20 minutes, and I'm like, dude, I could spend 2 weeks and it wouldn't look like that.
Right. I know it's like that horse video that we've all gotten on our Facebook pages like 1,000 times. If you're a glass blower, you've had this on your wall or something. The old Venetian guy making a horse in like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And you just go, oh.
Yeah. Our horses at Disney take us almost 2 hours.
Wow.
I mean, don't get me wrong; it's a different kind of glass, but that same size, the guy that Miguel Ribas that makes them, it's about a 2 hour piece. They're gorgeous, but man, it's such a vast difference. It's so funny.
So you're working Boro at Disney?
Yeah. 95% of our work there is torch work is Boro. We have Susan who does our jewelry, bead making stuff, and then we have our hot shop also in the back that they do all the soft glass, bigger stuff.
Nice.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, so I definitely get that. I think that's part of what I think is fun with our culture right now, and just even just the functional scene, but even the glass world in general, are all these artists that have the ability to teach, because not everybody can teach. You can be the best artist in the world and have zero skill set on teaching, and the classes that are being offered by some of these quote unquote masters that are out there, it's the availability to take classes, like you're saying, like Millies are something I've always wanted to learn since I started this 18 years ago almost. I've been intrigued by them. I mean, the Venetians have been making Millies for hundreds of years, and it's something I've always just been so fascinated by, just being a kid looking at paperweights that were made in China probably, but they looked beautiful, and to be able to spend just a month just practicing making Millies, it would be killer. Like maybe one day when I retire, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah. Don't ever retire.
No, I retired when I graduated high school.
Let me tell you, I don't ever intend on retiring, because you know what? You're going to go golfing like twice, and then you're going to start watching daytime TV, and then you'll be dead in 6 months.
Yeah, and 100 pounds overweight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, I mean, when my time comes, the family's going to be in the house. They're going to be like, "What's that smell?" And I'll be out in my studio, slumped over the torch. My hair will be burning. I'll be, yep. Kick the bucket.
Yeah, you're just.
The way I'm gonna go.
Yeah, dude, you die and then you immediately cremate yourself right there on the bench.
Yeah, that's right.
That's so funny. Come by with some glass and make some ashes, some marbles for everybody.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So I guess then for the oxygen system. So what was the inspiration? Since your company's name is Oxygen Frog, and we got into your Stillwater inspiration, what came up what was the inspiration for the name Oxygen Frog?
The Oxygen Frog. I was just trying to come up with something that people would remember. The frog doesn't necessarily have any deep spiritual meaning. Maybe it does. I'll think of something. That was sincere. I was just trying to come up with something that would that people would remember. And the philosophy of the company is, we all come from humble beginnings. Most of us do anyway. I do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When I put this together, I was trying to do it because the amount of money we're talking about here, to just buy a first class system, take it out of the box and, start it up. I mean, there's a lot of glass blowers that drive vehicles that cost less than that, and I respect that. And that's why I design my products the way I do. I mean, a lot of this stuff can be sourced elsewhere. And I actually, if people want to take the time and really, really dig in to see what it takes to put one. I did a Torch Talk episode.
Yeah.
Number 85.
Okay.
I go into how to read all the compressor curves and how to really, because if you just run out, just grab a compressor and stick your concentrators on there and a tank and pressure switch. I mean, it'll probably work and it may be okay, but if you understand the theory and exactly what's happening just a little bit more, you can actually make a pretty decent, simple system for really not all that much money. You just have to understand what's happening. You have to do a little homework, to but the easiest way to get started in this, because I mean everybody hates oxygen and everybody hates to run out and everybody hates banging up their truck going to get another bottle.
Mm-hmm.
um, the easiest ways to do it, like I did it, is if you find a couple concentrators, you can get a good deal on them or whatever. You can just start running your center fire or your top torch off it, and then you'll find out, instead of changing a bottle every so often, maybe you're changing it once a month, and that's a big deal just to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's huge.
But when you go to a fully developed system, like an oxygen frog, that one thing you'll find is your work actually changes. If you're constantly, whether you realize it or not, but if you're running off bottles, you've got one eye on the tank, and you're not turning your flame up maybe as high as you could or you really want to, because you're trying to stretch that bottle out. But once you go to an unlimited system like this, you start using bigger flames, and then your work starts to flow better. You're using more oxidizing flames, for instance, so your colors they become brighter. And you're willing to take some more chances that maybe you wouldn't have taken before. I noticed even when I just went to a couple of concentrators, all of a sudden, I started learning a lot faster, for sure.
Yeah, man, it's so true. Because I know, like, going from a K tank to just liquid alone, that's how I was. I was like, oh, now I don't have to worry about running out necessarily. I can actually play a little bit and not worry about wasting my oxygen.
Yes, exactly. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, it's huge.
So when it comes to the on-demand systems, I don't mean to sound too arrogant here, but there's really two kinds. There's there's a simple system, which is just a compressor and a tank, and you put your concentrators on there, and it's got a pressure switch, and everything comes on and off. But you just run the compressor wide open, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on it now, because the theory gets pretty involved. But on a simple system like that, you can't. The problem with those is that you can only match the compressor to the concentrators in a very tight range. And because the compressor capacity isn't constant, it changes while you're using it. It may be asking for 40 liters a minute, it may be asking for 20 liters a minute. And what changes that is the pressure in the holding tank.
Yeah.
As the pressure drops because you're raging hard, the compressor will start to speed up. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's like when you're sandblasting with a smaller compressor.
Yeah.
You're always fighting it, and you can definitely tell a difference in not only your pressure but the sound of the compressor itself.
Right. So any of these simple systems, what happens is that when you pull the tank down low, you're only feeding it a fixed amount of oxygen. It could be 20 liters, 30 liters, whatever your concentrators are set at. And then when the compressor tries to go faster than that, it'll actually start to pull a vacuum on the intake. And that's actually catastrophic, because what happens through the laws of thermodynamics, the pressures start to increase in the compressor cylinders. And those oilless compressors, they just have little plastic piston cups in them. And when the temperatures start to get higher, that plastic starts to soften and they start to wear more. And now the compressor starts to leak. And the real tragedy is that they'll still compress and they'll still fill your tank just like they always did. But on the suction stroke, since you're pulling a vacuum, they'll actually start to pull air in around the piston rings. And then when it goes into the compression stroke, it shoves that in the tank. So whereas your concentrators may be making 92% oxygen, it may be picking up another 10% air as it goes through the compressor. So what you're really seeing at the torch may be 80%, 85%.
Interesting.
So, and that was and I had this because I had sold like I think two systems plus the one that was in my studio, and that's where I noticed it in my studio. I'm like, what is wrong? There's nothing wrong with my concentrators, but my torch is just not doing what it's supposed to do. It's, you can tell the flames are real soft. Something's going on. I got a leak somewhere. And then I finally determined that it was in the compressor. Well, that's a difficult problem to solve. Um, you can't go redesigning the compressor, and there are more expensive compressors out there that won't do that, but they're a lot more expensive. They're not just a little more expensive.
Right.
So, and that's why I really started thinking about this, really started racking my brain. And there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in my personal life that was distracting. But then it finally dawned on me, this active compression control. And that's the other kind of system. And the Oxygen Frog is the only one that has this. No other system has active compression control. And what it actually does is I train the compressor or program the compressor, however you want to say it, but there's a lot of instrumentation and controls on that compressor that sense what's coming out of the concentrators. It senses the flow rate coming from the concentrators, and then it controls the compressor capacity to never ask for more. So you never pull a vacuum
Oh,
on the
interesting.
concentrators,
Yeah.
and then it never sucks air in. And the other advantage to that is, on a simple system, you have to pick the number of concentrators to match the compressor. Otherwise, that's a huge problem. And then you got to try to operate in a real tight pressure range. The compressor capacity is always changing, so you're doing your best to match it. But with this active compression control, I mean, my Oxygen Frog can be run with as low as 20 liters a minute, or as much as 50 liters a minute. I can accept a real wide range because I have active compression control.
Huh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it was a huge breakthrough. And even the couple systems I was out there, I started warning my couple, and it was Gabe was one of them. And I went over to Gabe. I'm like, hey, man, you might be seeing some purity problems, but I've got the solution. and he hadn't even noticed it yet. But it happens on a simple system. You'll start having purity issues within just a few hundred hours of running. It doesn't take long at all to wear it out. And if you're running a lower number of concentrators, it'll happen even faster because the problem's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a you get into a little death spiral because everybody's like, oh man, my oxygen purity's getting low. So you're like, oh well, so you turn the concentrators down, to try to make more pure oxygen. Well, that just makes the problem worse because now you're starving the compressor even more.
Right.
So
is there an actual sensor in your machines that read how, like, the purity of the oxygen that's in there?
not the purity, but it's reading the flow rate and some other things that are coming from the concentrators, but it doesn't measure the purity.
Okay.
And then maybe I should talk about that for a second. Hang on, I'm gathering my thoughts because I'm about to get real theoretical here. Oxygen sensors, oxygen meters, they have to be calibrated, and they read the partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, partial pressure. It's like we're at let's say 14.7 psi is atmosphere.
Okay.
And the oxygen's like 21%. So the partial pressure of the oxygen is 21% of 14.7 psi. You follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So these meters are going to interpret that just the pressure of the oxygen. It doesn't measure the total pressure. It just reads the partial pressure of the oxygen, which is 21% of 14.7 psi. It'll measure that pressure, which is, 4 or 5 psi, whatever it is. And then it converts that to a percentage oxygen.
Okay.
Now, if you were to take that same air and put it, in a jar at say double the pressure, but it's still only 21% oxygen, but the pressure's double, and you put that oxygen sensor in there, it would read, instead of 21%, it would read 42%.
Huh. So, like, if you took that jar and went, like, so many, feet underwater, in a sense, to increase pressure?
Yes,
Because I know,
because
like, because like with oxygen tanks, when you're diving, that you deal with all that shit. It's amazing how much gas you have in a small tank, but like you're dealing with some serious pressures with your airflow when you're breathing.
yes,
Under deeper than 35, 40 feet. Going down to like 75, 80 feet deep on a dive, you can tell the difference in the pressures of your oxygen for sure.
yes, exactly. No, you're exactly right. So the reason why I mention this is because if you just take an oxygen meter and it's just sitting on the table there, it's reading 21%, and a storm front comes through,
Mm-hmm.
the percent oxygen it's reading will change because
Right.
the barometric pressure just changed.
Yeah, interesting. Especially like if you're dealing with guys that are working out in Denver, or
Yes.
different, because here in Florida. I mean, you're a little higher in Tallahassee elevation wise, but like where I'm at, I'm 16 feet above sea level right now. So
Holy cow.
yeah, so my pressures aren't that high.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. As compared to, Denver's at what, 6,000 feet,
Yeah.
a mile high. Um, yeah, yeah, it'll make a difference. So you have to calibrate the instrument to that. So when you're doing that, like some of these flow through oxygen meters, if you run a real high flow rate through it, it'll it actually pressurizes the sensor, and it'll start reading much higher than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever see a reading on an oxygen meter that's on a concentrator, if you ever see a reading above 95%, it's not calibrated right, because concentrators can only put out 95%.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason is the absorbent that's in those concentrators only removes the nitrogen. It leaves the argon behind, and we never realize, but there's like 0.75% of argon in the air, and that gets concentrated with the oxygen. So when you push a concentrator to its absolute limits, you end up with 95% oxygen and 5% argon.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, that's why they're limited to 95. And they can do some fancy things to get that other 5% out, but it's not worth the money, and you won't be able to tell the difference anyway at your torch.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So what about for the medical community then for their oxygen tanks? Is it the same way? Because I know, like, for instance, like years and years ago when I was doing my fire academy stuff, we had a call over at a hospital because some lady had a diabetic coma and like literally passed out while she was driving in the parking lot at the hospital and crashed into their liquid oxygen system tank for the hot that supplied all the air for the hospital.
Oh,
Yeah, bro. Like they didn't know what to do. Like we had it ended up becoming a hazmat call. They had brought in a truck from every freaking station. I mean, literally, there was like it was the coolest shit I've ever seen because there was like literally 150 fire trucks at this little ass hospital because they needed somebody there that knew what the hell was going on. And when it was all said and done, they realized, okay, all it really is just it can become explosive under high pressure. Like if you dropped like a boulder on it or something like that. Otherwise, no big deal. But so that got me thinking because at the time I was still doing glass, so that made me think about it too. Like, well, shit, I can't breathe off my liquid oxygen tank at my house, so they have to have some kind of filtration systems that run their gases through. So is it similar to like what you have set up in terms of like a filtration system to help relieve and get the extra stuff out of the gas to make it more pure to the 95%, or like is hospital gas are they breathing 100% oxygen or is there that 5% argon? Do you know?
well, if they're running off concentrators, and some hospitals do, that 5% argon is in there, and it doesn't hurt anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's inert. It's
Right.
as far as your body's concerned, I don't think it can tell the difference between nitrogen and argon.
Mm-hmm.
So, but liquid oxygen and things, that's made a different way. They don't use a pressure swing absorption. That's what the oxygen concentrators operate on, is a technique called pressure swing absorption, which is really freaking cool. But I think what most of the liquid tanks and stuff, they actually do what they call cryogenic distillation, where they somehow just take raw air, and they get it so cold it actually liquefies, and then they distill it just like you distill liquor. They boil off the nitrogen or the oxygen or whatever comes off first, and they fractionate it that way, so you end up with eventually somewhat pure oxygen, depending on how far they want to take it. So I don't know what the purity is. It's probably higher than 95%.
Huh. Yeah.
But a system like that's really only it really only becomes economically viable when the plant is huge. And if there's a cheap source of power nearby, you see plants like that. They tend to be built near like hydroelectric plants or nuclear facilities that are, nuclear plants that have, lots of cheap power is where they'll build those types of plants.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, that's actually a good transition because I was wanting to ask about that because part of my bringing you on was to talk about, economical differences between your system and, say, just having your own K tanks at home. So monetarily wise, like what kind of power bill are you looking at? Like, are these a 110 systems?
Yeah, this 110 volt system, you'll need two 15 amp circuits to run an oxygen frog wide open. I mean, if you're running on 20 liters, you could probably get away with one 15 amp circuit. In Tallahassee, we pay 12 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. And at that electricity price, you can figure about $1 per K tank worth.
Wow, that's awesome.
And actually, that brings me to a point that I wanted to talk about. Everybody that ever calls me, they all want to tell me what torch they're running and the kind of work they're doing and how many people are in the shop. And I'm like, and of course, I always like to hear those stories, but that's not the information I need. What I need to know is how fast you go through a K tank or a liquid tank. That's the real question. How big of a system do you need? How fast are you going through a K tank? A 30 liter system, a 30 liter a minute oxygen frog will give you the equivalent of K tank in 3.9 hours.
Huh.
And if we go as high as 50 liters a minute, it gives you a K tank in 2.3 hours. So I know I'm not man enough to go through a K tank in 2.3 hours. So, but that is the real question: is what is your oxygen consumption? And then we look at too, because that's making some assumptions too that you're using it at a steady rate through the whole time, which we know is not true.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes you're doing fine work, and then sometimes you step on the pedal and just rage it. But that's why we have a buffer tank to store a little bit of this, and it gives you some surge capacity. Now the system's always running while you're working, or it ought to be, and but that a 60-gallon tank I think will store about a quarter of a K tank usable. So but that's just extra slack. And when the system's actually running, that's actually more slack than you think it is. I don't know if that makes any sense. But again, it's hard to predict, if everybody shows up and, tries to, pull back stacks at the same time, it may not be enough.
Right. So your system then, so the idea is that you fill up a tank with your system and then you run off the tank and your system is constantly keeping that tank full to a level to be able to functionally work off of it. Is that the basic idea?
Yeah, exactly. And that was another kind of a fun innovation I put on the latest version on the HPC2. I put a restart protocol switch on it. And what it does is I actually programmed two restart points in it. And I've got one set, when I send them out here, I set one at 110 PSI and the other 80 PSI. So if you think you're going to rage real hard that day and you're going to be right on the edge of what the frog can do, you can flip it up to aggressive and have everything start again at 110 rather than wait for it to come on down to 80 before you start trying to fill the tank again.
Huh, yeah.
And it just starts at a little, and it was an easy and inexpensive thing to do, but it gives you a little more flexibility on how hard you want to run the system. Like any piece of equipment, they like to either come on and stay on or shut off and stay off for a while. And you don't want it cycling on and off all the time. So, but this gives you the flexibility. You can decide on those days you think you're going to need it, you can make it run a little more aggressive. The other thing I do, and this is a real simple thing, I'm not the first person to think of this, is when I send out complete systems and people order a storage tank from me, I actually put an additional oxygen or an auxiliary oxygen port on there. And what that allows you to do is put a K tank right on the oxygen frog, and you just set the regulator on that K tank at say, 50 psi or something. And the frog will run and it'll take care of all your needs and it'll ignore that K tank unless you rage so hard that you pull the system down to 50. And then it'll just start sipping off that K tank just to make up that little bit of extra, to give you that little extra push over the cliff.
Oh, you there?
So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm
Sorry,
here.
I'm sorry. I lost you.
But when we set up something like that, because you can't always predict, if people call, yeah, I can recommend they build a 100-liter system. And that's another way because people call me and ask me what they should order from me. And I'm like, you know what? Most of the time I tell people just to start with a 30-liter system. I said, if that's not enough, we can just start adding concentrators until you get to where you need to be.
Right.
Because there's always going to be that one day a month. I get it. There's one day your friend didn't tell you he's coming, and he brings his 150 millimeter Herbie, and just made that up. I don't think they get that big.
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
But if you had that K tank on the side, you can take care of them that day. And then you didn't have to build a 100-liter system.
Mm-hmm. So the 100-liter systems, can you run directly off of that and not have to fill a tank, or is it the idea you had to have a tank being filled the entire time to run off it?
Well, when I say 100-liter system, I'm being not really that ridiculous because I have quoted systems that big before.
Yeah, because it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's a monster. Well, people ask me, can you fill K tanks with it? And the short answer is no, you can't because those K tanks are 2,500 psi, and this system's going to run at 125 max. Now, if you really wanted to do that, you could hook your home fill, like to the auxiliary oxygen port, for instance, and you could run the home fill off of the frog and fill tanks, at night or whatever, while you're not in the shop, and it could load your K tanks, just using the oxygen frog as a supply of oxygen.
But the idea is to really use the system as a working, running system throughout the day while you're on the torch.
Right. Yeah, it's really an on-demand system, and they all operate like this. It runs like an air compressor. When the tank gets so low, everything comes on and starts filling up until you get full, and it shuts off and then waits. They run this. It's the same scheme.
Yeah. How's the noise factor on them? Are they pretty quiet?
These are pretty quiet. That was another side benefit of the active compression control on the oxygen frog, is that I've got an adjustment on it, so you can kind of fine tune it to the size of system that you're running, and it's really easy to do. And once you set it, you don't ever have to mess with it again. It'll run within that range. But when you back it all the way off and essentially turn the active compression control off, you can hear the compressor just groan. And it just gets loud, and it's you can tell it's very unhappy because you're running off the compressor curve. You're starving it is what you're doing, and it doesn't like that. But then you just tweak that knob a little bit, and then all of a sudden it quiets down, it stops vibrating, and the world is in balance. And another benefit of this too is that since you're not stressing the compressor so hard, is that you don't have to rebuild them. I have to this day never rebuilt an oxygen frog compressor.
Huh. Nice.
I just haven't had one wear out yet. People ask me about warranties. I'm like, well, I'm offering, I don't know, 2-3 years right now, whatever it is, and but I'm kind of guessing because I've never had to rebuild one because they don't wear out because they're not being stressed like a simple system would be.
Right. Yeah, that's killer.
Because I do hear people rebuilding, and I'll say this too. If you're doing a DIY simple system, I'm not judging you at all. I mean, that's not really, if you match it pretty closely and you design it right and you're willing to rebuild it every a rebuild kit may only be $30. And if you're willing to do that, you can save a lot of money by doing it that way, and I respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think it's definitely the wave of the future. As much as it's convenient in a sense to be able to buy oxygen, but to be able to manufacture it yourself is just way more convenient. Sure, the initial cost up front is there, but it seems like the return on investment is going to pay itself off pretty quickly.
Well, and the intangibles. I mean, it's hard to measure the things like, um, you know, you didn't lose a weekend of work because you were out of oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's that worth?
Yep.
Or you broke a piece because you ran out of oxygen in the middle of it. Those things are hard to put a price on.
Yeah. So how long does it take about to fill, say, like a 282 high pressure tank?
I'm not an expert on the home fills, but I think they're like overnight or something. You'd have to ask somebody else because I've never dealt with a home fill.
Uh huh.
My system charges pretty quickly depending on what size it is and how big your tank is. Um, that's another nice thing too. I call them crimes of opportunity. If you see a good deal on a concentrator on Craigslist, grab it. Why not? And it's like in my studio, I'm proud to admit, I have a 120-gallon propane tank that I paid $100 for on Craigslist.
Heck yeah.
And please clean them out properly. We don't want to be putting oxygen on top of a bunch of propane grease,
Right.
which is a bunch in this one in my tank. But they're not that hard to clean out. There's instructions like on the Simple Green website and stuff like that to do oxygen cleaning. It's not a big deal. It's just work. But again, it's a crime of opportunity because sometimes you go on Craigslist and you can't find an old propane tank for $100.
And that's what you use to store your gas in, your oxygen?
Yes. Now, if you call me and you ask me to just send you a complete system, I'm going to send you a brand new air compressor tank.
Right.
So it's not dirty. So you don't have to worry about that. And it shows up at your door. But it's more expensive. But you don't have to mess with it. And
I never thought about that though, because it makes total sense, man. Because that's a huge amount of volume. If I can spit it out here, to be able to have a tank that size, to be able to keep oxygen always in it that you're running off of.
Exactly. And and it's like in mine. I mean, my oxygen tank is outside of my studio. It doesn't have to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Florida, since our weather's comparatively mild, I mean my concentrators and compressor and everything is actually outside in a shed also.
Oh, nice.
So the only thing you have to worry about with concentrators is if you have a real hard freeze, you can form ice crystals in the sieve beds, and it'll start breaking up the zeolite a little bit, which is not the end of the world. And it won't happen all at once. They can tolerate it occasionally, but it's easy, I think, to prevent that. They make these little electric space heaters that have freeze protection on them. They come on when it like gets down to 40 or 35 degrees or whatever.
Yeah.
Keeps from freezing. That's probably all you need in your shed just to keep the constant. Because I think they got to freeze pretty hard, like maybe 20 degrees for an extended period of time or something.
Huh.
But even if you did ruin one, they can be rebuilt. It's a few $100s. It's not the end of the world.
Yes. That being said, so what's the average cost? So you have a 30 and a 50 liter tank. So it's just
If you want to scrounge everything yourself, you could just buy my oxygen frog. Well, if you want to scrounge everything yourself, you could watch my Torch Talk episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I can show you how to make a simple system. But if you want to go with an oxygen frog and really have the best thing that's out there, but still save some money, right now, and this is November of 2016. My HPC2, which is the heart of everything, all you'd need is concentrators in a tank. But I'm selling right now my HPC2 for less than $3,000.
Nice.
And that's got all the technology. All you got to do is plug your concentrators into it, plug your tank into it, and you're off and running. And then if you want me to send you everything, I can send you a complete 30-liter system and that's with true refurbished medical 10-liter machines, not modified machines, but true 10-liter factory machines that have been refurbished. I can send you a complete 30-liter system for just under $6,000.
Heck yeah.
One caveat, and this only applies right now, is that I've cleaned my distributor out.
Wow.
I've sold everyone he can get his hands on. So he's like, Scott, yes, they stop taking orders here for a little bit till I can rebuild my stocks.
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
okay, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with us being in Florida, I think it'd be a little easier for us to get our hands on some of these systems as
Yeah,
our population, ebbs and flows here.
yeah, it's bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the world is awash in 5 liter concentrators. The 10 liters are a little harder to get.
Yeah, that sounds right. So I'm just trying to do some math here. So I'm figuring when I was going through liquid, I was going through liquid about every 3 weeks, and
Okay.
it was probably about $155. So I'm figuring I'm probably getting at the time I was probably getting I was getting like 14 tanks of liquid a year.
Okay.
So we'll say 14 times that by 155. So we're looking at 2,170. So literally, you could pay this back in 3 years completely
Yeah.
just from running it if you keep working the
Yes.
way you work. And then you're running free oxygen for potentially the rest of your glass career, minus a couple, bumps in the road with replacement parts or upgrades here and there,
Right.
which sound like it's kind of few and far between anyways. So it's,
Yeah.
your ROI is going to be, pretty big. And you could potentially pay it off just from making one pipe. If you're a baller out there and you're making $5,000 for pieces, shit, make a piece and go sell it, and pays for your old damn system.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just go make a $5,000 piece.
Yeah,
Good
exactly.
thinking. Um,
Break my system in.
yeah, I did the math last night, and I was doing it in K tanks,
Uh huh.
and like if you just bought my compressor, and you were paying $35 for a K tank, I mean you're looking at 88 K tanks. So that could be a year. I don't know. It depends how fast you're going through those tanks.
Yeah.
If you bought a full system, you'd be looking at and this is at $35 a K tank. You're looking at 222 tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
And I
crazy.
do know there's a lot of people go through a K tank a day. They can
Yeah.
go through they
Yeah.
can go through 200 in a year easy.
Yeah, I can go through 2K tanks a day sometimes.
Wow. Yep. You need a 50-liter system.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, that's what I was saying. Like before we recorded, like talking with the guys in Alaska and Hawaii, like they're paying just crazy numbers for oxygen. It's just insane. So I mean, shit,
Yeah.
this system would pay for itself in the first 3 months, technically, and that's with what they're paying for their gases out there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I know a lot of these guys are setting themselves up that way because it's just way more affordable.
Yep. Oh yeah. It changes everything, dude. I'll tell you what. I bet this is what heaven is like.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm trying to look here, see if other questions about this I have. Oh yeah, so a part of my thing too, with the whole Florida thing with us saying no to the Amendment 1 with the solar power crap we just had recently, and solar power is becoming more prevalent in Florida, and I'm sure other places as well. Do you see these systems at all ever being able to be run off of like a solar power system of some sort?
Well, I mean, it's just electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you had a solar power system that could, deliver the amount of power that it would need, certainly.
Because I'm just thinking like the setups you see nowadays for simple things. I mean, you got solar power panels and backpacks that you can charge your cell phones on. That kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking like if you had I mean, I know these systems aren't necessarily portable, but if you wanted to go set up at a show for like the Renaissance Festival, when I did that, we were there for 7 weeks, and we just stored K tanks under our benches. But potentially you can have some kind of small system set up that's more portable. I don't know what your future plans are for these systems, but just thinking, it'd be fun to have like a portable setup that you can go demonstrate, do trade shows, etc. with it, and then have
Right.
be out because you're potentially out in the sun, so you could have your little solar power set up and really be efficient.
Yeah. Well, you'd need, for a fully built out, say a 50-liter, you really need like 3,600 watts. Excuse me. Now, on the other hand, you can go down to Harbor Freight and get a real nice 6,000-watt generator for about $600,
Yeah, that's true.
which is plenty enough to run one of these rascals.
Yeah. Huh. That's good thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes more sense too, and especially generators these days, they're pretty damn quiet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they usually come with like, I don't know, 20, 30 foot cords, so you can roll them far enough away that, it's not blasting right in your ear.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, something I was thinking about earlier too with the tobacco leaf setup. So, from what I remember correctly, does their systems fill a liquid tank, a doer tank there, and then they run off of that, or
No.
or was that just a backup?
Um, yeah, they may have brought that in, like when he does his parties and stuff, like when you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he has a 40-liter system, and that's good for. And he's got 120 gallons of storage, so he's got a good size storage, and it's a pretty decently sized system. But when you start talking about 10 glass blowers all showing off at the same time, that's not enough to handle that.
Yeah.
So that's why he brings in liquid.
Okay, that makes more sense then.
And he's actually set up with an auxiliary too. And he does, like when he's bringing some of the big guys in to do a demo, he'll uh, he'll park some K tanks back in that storage room next to the oxygen frog, and actually set them up as an auxiliary, like I had mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And because you just don't want one of those guys to. I mean, I watched coil condenser shove 50 liters a minute through a Mirage. And I called GTT, and they told me you could only get 30 through it. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I should explain this to Coil. But when he's making, like I say, when he's making $10,000 pieces of glass, I'm not going to argue with him.
Yeah, totally. I know, like when I ran as Kabuki there, when they're like whatever year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and when they asked me to come up there and do my little Olaf demo, it was like I turned that thing on. I was like, holy shit, this is a lot of heat. And a lot of gas coming out of here. It was awesome. I've been running my same Carlisle for like 20 years almost. It feels like, but yeah, it's pretty cool, man, with this new technology. Because that's what I was kind of wondering too. Like as the torches continue to evolve and get better and more efficient, like with what's them called? They're the hell. Nortel has that arrow that they've been working on as like it's a hotter, smaller base torch that's still in development, but they're getting to a point where they can run it on a lower PSI, but it's just as hot and efficient as like a higher PSI torch, which I think is pretty sweet.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's something I would like to do too, is design torches. I've got some ideas about that too, but I don't know if I'll ever get to that one.
Yeah, man, you got to get like an assistant and start scaling your business in different areas somehow to have all these little projects.
Start delegating.
Yeah. Which is very difficult to do when you're an artist and have that kind of brain.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole nother skill.
Yeah. Yeah, which I'm still learning. My wife's always like, why don't you start delegating stuff? I'm like, well, because I do. And then, yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly. You don't realize how good you are until you try to get somebody else to do it.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a whole side note thing. I heard a conversation about the delegating time of thing. And there's a 300% theory. I forget what the hell it is, but basically that say you need someone to pack your orders for you, and if you spend so much time, I think it was like 30 hours with a person showing them how to do something the way you do it, and you just focus on them doing that specific task, they'll be just as efficient and as good, if not better than you did it yourself, because you've really focused that time. Instead of just taking somebody to the side and saying, hey, here's how I do my shit, show a quick demo, and then you walk away. To actually invest the time into them, then that investment pays off, because now they're set and ready to go, and they're good to go forever doing that task. Because I know we all worry about someone not being able to do it as good as we do or whatever, but when it comes down to it, typically that person's actually able to do it better than you can do it.
Yep.
And we need to just be doing the shit that we can do, like your engineer brain. So you're coming up with all this tinkering and different items and ideas, and next thing you know, you got the cure for war and AIDS and cancer all built into one oxygen concentration system or some shit.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, man, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny how it works, the artist brain, and then also the scientific brain and the engineering brain. It's like. It's interesting. We're all, there's such a different dichotomy of human beings in the community, not just the glass pipes, but just in like the world of glass, because of what's all involved in it. Not just, I mean, shit. We're sitting here talking about oxygen concentrate systems. I never thought I'd be talking about that one day. It's just so neat. All these different areas of pardon the pun, but of concentrate in our areas, so many things we can focus on.
Yep.
And you've got this niche, which is incredible and it's needed. I know there's a couple other companies out there that are doing it, but from the research I've done and the feedback I've gotten and talked to people about it, definitely your name comes up out of all of it as being one of the leaders in the concentrate systems. So big props to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. And I definitely want to bring you back on too, like I was saying, to do just a show. I want to talk about like really the process of getting, we'll do like an unpacking episode where we place our order with you and then we get it home and it's like, okay, now what do we do? I'm gonna definitely want to get into that because it's something that I'm looking at myself eventually with starting my online courses. I'm gonna be doing a lot of stuff at my house, and I'm gonna want to get a little setup for me for here, just for personal use, not necessarily for making orders and stuff.
Right.
So I definitely want,
absolutely.
because in a selfish way, I like to ask questions for my knowledge, and then also for whoever's listening. And thank God there's listeners. So if you're listening, thank you. Because when I first did the show, man, I was talking to myself. And when I got that first download, I was like, yes, I'm not talking to myself anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good shit. So, all right, man. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a quick break to thank our sponsors. And then we'll transition into our Crashing the Kiln round.
Sounds great.
This segment's brought to you by Mountain Glass and Wise Guy Radio. As a big thank you to you, the listener, Mountain Glass is offering an exclusive sale for listeners, 35% off North Star for the entire month of December 2016. When you go to checkout, just put in the code WNS. That's WNS at checkout, and you'll receive 35% off North Star First Quality Rods. And for any other questions or concerns, just go to mountainglass.com. That's mountainglass.com. All right, man, we are back. Crashing the Kiln round consists of, I believe, 7 questions, and I say I believe because I still haven't counted how many questions there are. And if you want to give me a 30 to 60-second answer, you can expound upon them as well if you'd like, which people always do. And even though you're not huge glass artists right now, but I'm kind of curious with everybody if there's any living glass artists out there that you have not yet worked with. Who is it and why?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mentioned a list earlier. I mean, I would love to study with Kabuki and Stankard and Lauren Stump. I mean, those guys are just, I mean, there's so many that are just truly gifted that life just isn't long enough, sadly.
I know. I don't know, man. With technology, we might be 120 and look 60.
Yep.
Yeah, who knows? I hope not, because damn, where are we going to put everybody?
That's
what I would say. There's another double-edged sword.
Yep.
Cool. So what are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
Oh, clear. I really like, I've always loved from day one, Mystery Adventurine.
Okay.
And of course, Amber Purple. I know I'm not breaking any barriers here.
Hey, it's one of my favorites still. On the same boat.
Just the way those colors will strike and the range, and it's still somewhat unpredictable to me, but it's just when they come out right, they're just breathtaking, I think. And and I love these newer sparkly colors that Troutman and North Star and the others are all coming out with, the the Leprechaun and the Stardust and stuff like that. Those are spectacular.
Yeah.
Anything shiny and I know everybody loves the cadmiums, and I appreciate them. They just tend to frustrate me. Maybe it's because I'm on a premix torch, but maybe that'll be on my list. Someday I'll spend 6 months trying to figure out how to work cadmium colors.
Right. When they're available again.
Yeah.
So you got one more color specifically.
Oh, let's see. I do like the striking reds.
Okay.
Those are nice. They become very like Elvis.
Yep.
That's a very easy to use color, very forgiving, and it's always beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Elvis is in pomegranate is another really pretty ruby.
Yes.
I love. Yeah, it's neat. Let's see. If you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, it could be an emotional word or philosophical, I guess, in a sense. What would it be?
I think it's oblique. That's 2 words, isn't it?
That works for me.
You
What is
know,
your? Oh, go on.
hear that when you hear that crack, and you just know that 2 hours of your life just went down the drain.
Hmm. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So, what is your worst injury in the studio?
Oh my gosh. I got burnt really bad one time. And I was still. This is still very early in my glass journey, and I was trying to do inside out. And again, there was no one teaching me. You just kind of hear about these things, so you just try it. So, anyways, I'm there on my red mats, pre-mix tip. I'm trying to do an inside out, and I moved the glass, the glass cup. I moved it out of the flame without moving my hand out of the way, and I caught my ring finger, just that first knuckle on my ring finger. OMG! I don't think I've ever experienced anything that painful. And it's too late before the time you even it's too late. Once you even realize it's happening, it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 4,000 degrees in human skin. That carbon is not a good thing. Yeah, I've actually had a very similar experience, except for the inside out I was doing. It was on a cold night, and at the very bottom of the tube where my blowpipe was attached to, that little initial tack point where I started my lines, it cracked on me, and the tube just like fell off, but the handle was still in my hand, and the flame went right across my pointer finger, my middle finger, and my ring finger on my left hand, and it really focused on my middle finger on the nail bed area. It, like the first little knuckles, there. Oh yeah, bro. It was like, holy shit, that sucks. And what made the matters worse was my son, I think he was 5 at the time, and I had it all wrapped up, and we were at the store, and he grabbed it and literally pulled the bandage off my middle finger, which of course took all my skin off with it. So like it took that much longer for it to heal. Like, he felt terrible about it. I couldn't be mad at him because he didn't know, but it was like, yeah, one of those things. Because I always tell people, when you burn yourself, try to leave the blisters alone. If you have skin there, still leave the skin there, unless you have like dirt and debris and stuff in it. Which there's nothing worse than someone that has a road rash and you're scraping out, road out of them. But with your skin, you got to leave that there if you can, just as a natural bandage. But man, my hand hurts just thinking about it. Like rubbing my hand right now. Jeez. No fun.
I'll tell you what.
No fun. Yeah, I don't know if you heard or not. I just did the. Oh, go on.
When I was an engineer, I mean, that was a big lunchtime conversation as we'd all sit around and talk about industrial accidents. People got nails shot in their eye or got their feet dissolved in acid. And, it's like, okay. Oh, what you having for lunch there, Chef Boyardee? I mean,
oh, dude, that's how the hospital was. I did my ER runs and stuff. It was it was part of actually what made me not want to get into the medical field. Was like you get so desensitized from that stuff. And we had a guy come in that was code. We're doing CPR, intubating this guy, the whole 9 yards. And when it was all said and done, we all walked away, and they're like, "Okay, pizza's here." and we all washed our hands and went and had pizza.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It was like nothing happened. It was just, you got to do that, I guess, in those type of fields, just kind of because everything's a situation. But man, yeah, it takes out the human experience, I guess, and feels like the compassion goes away. So in the studio, do you listen to TV? I mean, do you watch TV, listen to music, or do you do both?
Let's see. A lot of times I listen to talk radio, but then sometimes I'll take my computer out there and I'll watch, Pulp Fiction or something. But I would have to say most of the time I listen to Frank Zappa almost exclusively. It's kind of funny how I evolved in that direction. When I was younger, I mean, some of that stuff, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. But now, as I'm getting older, I'm like, this is genius. And I don't know if I'm getting smarter or if I'm getting dementia. I'm not sure.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I know what you mean, though, for sure. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So do you have any glass-blowing themed tattoos?
I have no tattoos.
Cool. I figured as much, but, I still got to ask it. I don't want to just assume, but, Cool, man. And my last and final question, which is always an interesting one, and I'm still trying to fine-tune it to make it make more sense. So, but if you're stranded on an island, it could be a fantasy island of your choice that had a glass studio on it and only supplied your gases, your kiln, and your torch, and you had to make something in order to survive. What 5 items would you bring?
What 5 items would I bring to use in the studio?
Yeah, to make said item to survive.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let's see. Of course, you got a torch. Wait, that goes without saying.
Yep, that's there for you. Yeah, so you have your gases, your kiln, and your torch are waiting for you.
Paddle, tweezers, um, the claw. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Yep. Let's see. What's that? That's three. What else do I use? Marble mold. Now, if I was making venturis, there's like 7 special jigs that are just for that I'd have to bring, but the boat's not big enough for that. So, see, what else do I use? Oh, a trash bucket. I need a big one of those. Um, I think that covers it. Am I forgetting anything?
Yes, there's always. I mean, I've actually been thinking about adding this one to one of the things you get because there's one thing you need to be able to see to.
A reamer, that's a tool I use a lot. I still have the original reamer I bought when I bought my torch, and I think it's down to the nub. It's there's like because I use it directly in the flame, which I know is abusive, but I do it when I'm flaring like 12 millimeter tube. Because I like to control the flare real delicately. Um, Venturi perks are very precise. The tolerances have to be just right or it won't work. So I have worn that little graphite reamer out. I mean, I think it was originally like 6 inches long of graphite, and I think I'm down to like 3/4 of an inch. Pretty soon there's just going to be threads on the little metal rod.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two like that myself that are just like almost they're nubs, but they come in handy. They have their uses.
Yeah.
They are what they are. Oh, the one thing I want to add probably I'm thinking about adding it because everybody forgets to say it, but is your glasses.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why it's a fun question because there's like so many things we could bring. It makes you really think about like, all right, what are the actual true necessities that we need in order to manufacture? Because like say tomorrow the world ends, okay, so what are we gonna do?
Yeah, when you get my age, you're running around the house trying to find your glasses, and they're on top of your head.
Exactly.
And nobody will tell you. That's the funny part.
Yep.
They'll say, no, I haven't seen them, Dad. All right.
Oh, that's so funny. So, well, before we let you go, my man, if you have any parting piece of advice you can give our audience, and then also where we can find you out there in the world of cyberspace.
I would say carpe diem. Life is brief. No matter how long it seems sometimes, life is brief. Take chances. I mean, that's one thing that I wish I would take more chances in my art. Like making, just for example, making human figurines. Art art is art, and sometimes it's because of the skill of the artist, but sometimes because and I think even more often it's because it reaches down and touches people's heart. Like the Beatles, they were good musicians, but who was their guitarist? And you'd have to think about it for a second. And, if I said Hendrix, though, you'd know exactly who I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Hendrix was an amazing musician, but the Beatles, they reached in, they touched people's heart. I mean, it was a phenomenon. People still weep when they hear them now. And art is like that. You can make this amazing scientific glass, but when you start doing things that touch people emotionally, like the hearts and the flowers and the human figurines and things that they can relate to, but you have to take a risk to do that. I remember, but life is short. Carpe diem.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. And then where can we find you out there in cyberspace?
I am on oxygenfrog.com, and you can also, I'm also on Facebook. There's an Oxygen Frog webpage, and you can always call me. Should I give my phone number out?
I'll put it in the show notes for you.
Okay, that'll be fine.
That way you're not getting a bunch of crazy phone calls, or you might anyways, but
I get those anyway.
Yeah, me too. The beauty of having a website nowadays, you get all kind of calls from places you have no idea where they're coming from.
And you can tell people too that I'm usually out there on like there's some news groups that if you guys are interested in oxygen, you really ought to get involved with like concentrated lab plants on Facebook.
Oh, what was it again? I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, concentrated lamp workers.
Okay.
On Facebook. Most of the people there are just top notch, and if you have any questions about Hey, I'm trying to put my own system together and I found this compressor and this, and how do you do a pressure switch again? There's lots of people there that'll help you out, point you in the right direction. And if you want to tag me, if you really get stuck, you can tag me. And sometimes if I've got the time, I'll chime in and try to help you out, even if you're not buying an oxygen frog. Um, and I'm just happy to do that because I just appreciate the community, and these guys have been so good to me. Whatever I can do to help anybody out.
Yeah, it's killer. Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that for sure.
Right.
Having the expert in the group. Nothing worse than having a group of amateurs that have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah. It is, I think, refreshing for people. There's a lot to be said for experience, but then occasionally to have somebody that really has been trained in this and really understands, at the fundamental level what's actually happening. Sometimes that's just a big help.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Heck yeah, man. Well, again, I really appreciate your time and coming on the show and sharing your knowledge. And I know we kind of bounced all over the place. And again, I want to bring you back on and really, really dive into, the unpacking and then how do we set ourselves up and really get into the nitty gritty kind of details. It might be a little bit of a heavy episode with information, but I think it's definitely one of those things that's valuable, like an evergreen episode that, people can go back and listen to as a reference in a sense, for down the road. And we can put a little PDF with it, so there's an actual printable thing people can use, different types of things just to really help not only promote the concentrate systems, but promote yourself as well and really share your knowledge.
Right. That sounds great. I'd love to do it.
Heck yeah, man. We'll go ahead and hang on and we'll say goodbye off the air. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in to episode 138 of the Wise Guy Radio Show. Scott Fleishman. Also, he's with Oxygen Frog. You can find them all over the socials. I'll have the links in the show notes for y'all. And thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Wise Guy Radio Show. Take it easy. Peace.
Thanks, Jason.
No problem, man. Take it easy. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by The Flow magazine. Since its inception, the focus of The Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with the continuation of our Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make The Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to The Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's theflowmagazine.com.